Halifax Regional Council is proposing some major zoning changes that would be brought in under Ottawa's Housing Accelerator Fund. Ottawa is giving the city $79 million to build housing, provided Council loosens some existing zoning restrictions in order to build faster. Among those in favor of the changes is Joseph Kirby. Joseph is with the volunteer group called More Homes Halifax. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So walk me through this. There's some resistance to this proposal to allow, for example, 4-unit buildings in all areas of peninsular Halifax and all over the region. A lot of resistance to that. One specific. What's your take on that?
Well, I would say that the resistance is, first of all, not justified. We're in a housing crisis. That means that we're in a housing shortage. And if the city can do things to allow people to provide for that shortage, to allow builders to build homes for those who are demanding more housing, then they should be allowed to do so as long as they go through a normal permitting process. It should all be as of right development. And I don't see any good reason why you would resist. I mean, first of all, four units is incredibly modest, right? I mean, nobody's building gigantic towers or apartments, right? And that should, to me, that speaks to the not in my backyard position very strongly, that something this modest is being opposed. I mean, that just tells me that they would not be okay with doing anything to solve the housing crisis.
We had a critic on the show earlier this week who said that this planning proposal with the $79 million, you loosen up the restrictions, it's way too ad hoc. First of all, he said there's no housing crisis in the first place. But he said that, look, if we wait for interest rates to come down, that will take care of the housing issues, that builders and developers will get building. That's what's holding them up, the interest rates, not the existing framework of zoning and planning rules.
Sure. Well, I mean, lots of builders will cite interest rates, and that's absolutely true that interest rates do contribute to it, but that's not, it doesn't follow from there that therefore zoning policy doesn't also contribute to it. I mean, these are different things. A central bank imposing interest rates and a city government saying that you're not allowed to build housing in places. I mean,
but if the issue is that if the interest rates are slowing down development, wait for the interest rates to come down. Don't mess with the existing zoning bylaws.
Well, waiting for the interest rates to go down is good, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't change the existing zoning bylaws if it's shown that the existing zoning bylaws are contributing to the problem.
And there's a general worry, I think, among many that that this zoning reform, that the changing in the neighborhood would just sort of change the character of sort of classic Halifax neighborhoods. Does that concern you?
Well, I mean, it depends. So when it comes to allowing people to build homes, that's because that's what people with my position are saying. They're saying to allow people to do it, right? They don't want to force people to do it. We just want to allow people to do it. So if you allow people to do it, when it comes to the market demand, whether or not a neighborhood character is changing is going to be based on what people are demanding anyway, right? So it's not like I'm for or against the neighborhood character changing. It's just like whatever people want. That's just how it is, you know?
Will you be attending the public information session of these hearings?
I intend to, yes.
What do you want to say to them?
Oh, I would I would like to say that you've been insufficient. I just say the same thing to them as I always say to them when I go to the public hearings, which is that I believe that imposing these zoning restrictions on basic needs like housing, for example, they do it with other things too, like they had a hearing about a grocery store the other day, is what I would just say the same thing I'd say to them. I'd say you have no justification to impose what I would consider, and this is metaphorical language before I say it, a temporary blockade on people's basic needs until somebody who is never going to access the housing that other people are demanding says that it's okay. To me, that unjustifiably limits your right to freedom of association, bodily autonomy, and your property rights.
Is it a blockade, though? I mean, really? What we're experiencing right now is population boom.
Yes.
We need more housing. But at the same time, you can't just rush ahead with that until you've got the infrastructure, until you've got planned transit around all that stuff.
Sure.
I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, you got to wait for the infrastructure, right? Focus on that?
Well, yeah, focusing on the infrastructure is very good too. You know, I completely support any new funding that goes into infrastructure and, you know, sewer capacity and things like this. But I mean, once you have that, the city shouldn't, you know, this is kind of what I don't like about this conversation. Not with you, but just the debate generally is that there's this kind of like pivoting that always happens where if somebody says, I think you should be allowed to do something, and then somebody else will say, well, yeah, but what if you can't do it for X, Y, and Z reasons? And it's like, well, sure. I mean, then you should address those X, Y, and Z reasons. But that doesn't mean that, therefore, the government should not allow somebody to do the thing once you have completed it for X, Y, and Z reasons, nor should it mean that somebody shouldn't be allowed to do something even if they don't have the capacity to do it in the moment, you know.
Joseph Kirby, I appreciate your thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks. You have a good one.